Hey, it's Juck. At number one, the most beautiful uniform in all of sport. If they brought back the gray stripes, this thing is so far out in front of everybody, you can't touch it. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth for Ohioans. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. And welcome to Juck on Bucks. Appreciate you so much. A little late today, guys. It is Wednesday afternoon. I was supposed to have a show on Wednesday morning, and I was going to record that show with our buddy Dylan to get his take on the Washington game, on the press conference we were at yesterday, and on the upcoming Minnesota game, as well as some philosophical stuff, things I want to talk about tonight, I think, on the Buckeye Huddle Show, the offensive identity. The offensive identity at Ohio State, I don't think they've discovered yet. They're still working some things out, trying to figure out what's best. But Dylan was watching, of course, his Red Sox, who were in the playoffs against the Yankees, and I was waiting for that game to end. So I turned it on. He thought it'd be about 8:30, and this thing is just kind of dragging on, as baseball games do. What a horrible sport. And I ended up falling asleep. I've never told you this. I fall asleep a lot in this chair. I have a lot of late nights, and I just fall asleep sitting up in this chair. And I did that last night, missed out on my show with Dylan. He couldn't record this morning. So here we are. No Dylan. But I did want to come on and talk a little bit. There's some shows I want to do this week. For starters, yesterday we talked about the Ohio State defense and just how incredible this is to see what's been done here with this Ohio State defense in one offseason. PJ Fleck talked about it yesterday. PJ Fleck, one of the goofiest coaches, but he knows his football, man. He knows his football, and he was talking about how difficult it is, what Ohio State's doing, all the multiplicity, all the different looks they show, and then change post-snap. And he said, basically a lot of people would love to do this, but it's hard. You got to have great players. You got to be able to trust them. You got to have great coaching, and Ohio State is able to do it. And the fact that they're able to do this with all these new starters, and in one offseason, they switched over to this, and they got everybody to embrace it. Like, it's hard to get people to embrace change. They were able to do all of that in one offseason and not just pull it off somewhat successfully. They're the number one defense in the country. And that blows my mind. And I think it blows PJ Fleck's mind. And I'm sure it blows a lot of coaches' mind. And I don't think that it could be done anywhere else right now than Ohio State. I think that what Ryan Day has developed culturally is what has allowed this to happen. The professionalism, the teamwork attitude, the, not me first kind of attitude that permeates through that building is very, very hard to attain anywhere, incredibly hard in college football in 2025, when it is kind of a transient space. We got guys, star players moving from team to team. You got guys that, it's commonplace to have 2, sometimes 3 transfers on your college record before you're done. At Ohio State, it feels still very much old school. And to be able to pull it off at a high-level program, it's one thing at a D3 program or at a lower-level program. It's a lower-level FBS program where guys are playing for the love of the game. And it's just different when you're at a NFL factory. To pull this off is it's something special. And Ryan Day, now in year 7, man, this guy, he is just special. And I'm listening to him yesterday, and one of the things that stood out was just at one point he said, we're striving to be the best in the country every day, and where we're going is going to be hard. And it's just like, this guy is always 3 steps ahead of the game with a plan implemented, everybody on the same page. And we're in such good shape. We're in such good shape as the Buckeyes sit at number 1 in the country, and a clear number 1. The defense is obviously the best unit in the country. The best single unit in the country is the Ohio State defense. I don't think anything's close to it. They are number 1 in points per game allowed with 5.5, number 1 in red zone defense, number 2 in opponent adjusted yards per play, number 1 in points per play, number 1 in explosiveness, number 1 in touchdown rate, number 7 in pass defense, number 6 in opponent yards, number 8 in sacks, and number 19 in rush defense, which we'd like to see that rush defense improved. That'll be a little bit of a part of today's topic. But I think they're the unequivocal number one. And the craziest part about that is I don't even think they've found their offensive identity yet. They haven't found their offensive identity, number one, because they played Texas to start the season, which feels to me like it was a total one-off game. It altered the way they ran the preseason. So much of it was dedicated towards that Texas game. Just get the win any way possible. They win the game with a game plan that we'll probably not see again, Julian Saint's first ever game. And in addition to that Texas game, you got Julian Saint with his first ever road start out at Washington, one of the craziest, toughest places to play in the country, which I think also altered that game plan. In addition to that, just 6 possessions. When I looked at Julian Saint's total pass attempts this year, number one, Ohio State has thrown, they're ranked 110 in total pass attempts this year, 110th in the country out of 136. They're also 108th in rushing attempts. That's how few plays they've played. They've actually played half a game's worth less plays so far through 4 games than they did last year. And Julian Saint has an entire game's fewer pass attempts than Will Howard did at this time last year. So Julian Saint has basically played 3 games worth compared to Will Howard's last year. Will Howard with 32 pass attempts more, Julian Saint averaging about 30 pass attempts a game. So you're going to see a slower rate of improvement or feel for the offense when you're playing less plays and when you're throwing less balls. So I don't think we've seen what their identity is going to be. They're still trying a lot of things out. We're still seeing a ton of the tight end sets. We're still seeing, like we just saw against Washington. All right, now we've decided here's how I think we're going to use these running backs. It felt like they had some defined roles. And it just feels like they're still finding their way offensively. And the fact that they're still doing that, still working on that, yet clearly the number one team, pretty remarkable. When we look at all the teams, you know, the ones that came into the season with established quarterbacks and a ton of returning production, those teams supposedly knew who they were. One of them, Penn State. Ohio State looks considerably better than Penn State. And now a lot of people think Oregon looks better than Ohio State. There are a lot of people that voted Oregon number 1 over Ohio State. Buckeyes still number 1, Oregon number 2. I don't think there's some big gap, but I think Ohio State is clearly the number 1 program here. And to me, that is just amazing when you still got an offense kind of searching for who they are, and you turned over all these guys and you brought in a new defensive coordinator, and it's just a testament to Ryan Day and the program. So we got it great. And that is the preface before I ever say anything with any kind of criticism, which what I'm about to say isn't really criticism, more suggestions, some things I'd like to see. What I want to do tomorrow, I think, is an episode on the surprises of the year. We sit all off season and we talk about what we're going to see because we got nothing else to talk about. We talk about the coaches, the players, etc. And we kind of make predictions, and we usually come into the season with kind of a fan consensus about what we're going to see, right? It feels like that. And then there's a couple people that have outlier positions, and we know what they are. But there have been some surprises this year, a lot of really cool surprises, like Austin Sierreveld, for instance, starting at left tackle and being a great left tackle. That came out of nowhere. So I want to do an episode talking about surprises, both the good surprises and the not so good surprises. And we're going to do that episode. But today I want to talk about 4 guys in particular that I would love to see get some more playing time at Ohio State. And we'll start with the offensive line, which I thought coming into the year would be a top 5 offensive line. I love the players on this offensive line. When we look at what Austin's done, and obviously his story's been amazing, but his play has been just as amazing. The fact that he is, I believe, only allowed like 1 pressure this entire season so far per PFF is incredible for a guy who never played tackle, first time starting. He's a totally different guy when he gets on the field versus off the field. He's an Iron Buckeye. He's got a nasty attitude on the field, and he's just the quietest, most soft-spoken captain of this team, which is just awesome. And I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he'll be back next year, which is even more awesome. But when you look at him, on the other side, Phil Daniels, who also I believe will be back next year. 2 starting tackles coming back in 26. That's great because this team right now, which looks so good and is number 1, should theoretically be better next year. But we will go over and we'll do an episode of potential early departures because there are some guys certainly popping up that maybe we didn't feel coming into the season would be entering the draft after this year that now it looks like kind of are. I don't think Phil Daniels or Searville will be those. I think they'll both be back, and that's fantastic because they look like anchor tackles right now. Phil Daniels looks great. And Luke Montgomery, who it's crazy that Luke is in his first year starting. It doesn't feel like that to me. Maybe it's just because Luke has been, obviously he played a lot at the end of the season last year and played really good, but I don't know. He's just been kind of omnipresent in the discussion of offensive linemen since coming in, even when he was in high school, being an Ohio kid who was a very popular Ohio kid and a very popular recruitment, one of Justin Fry's best lands. But Luke, a first-time starter, is playing really, really good. Got the player of the week. He split it with Carson Hinsman. And boy, he played so nasty in that game. He made one mistake, but watching that all 22, man, he was a dog, a total dirt dog. I love the attitude he plays with. It's really similar to Phil Daniels. Austin Searveld's out there pancaking dudes. And Carson Hinsman has played excellent at center. Him and Luke got a lot of chemistry together playing next to each other. So when we look at those 4 guys, excellent. Now, after those 4 guys, Tegra at right guard has stood out as the number 5 lineman. He has not quite measured up in performance with his cohorts, and Tegra has played more football than all of them outside of Carson. And it would seem to me that Tegra would be at this point further along. We were hoping to see a lot of improvement with Tegra. It's not come. He has allowed, when you add together pressures and hurries, 11 on the year, and the next closest lineman is Daniels with 6, and most of them got 1 or 2. And Tegra has played an entire game's worth fewer snaps because he's been splitting snaps with Ethan Anyanwa, playing about 45 to the other lineman's 64. So Ethan, up until this point, had been getting like 15 snaps a game at right guard. Started off not so hot and then progressed pretty quickly. And the way he plays the position, a little more intensity than Tegra. He is certainly better run blocking. Not so sure on the pass blocking at this point, but Tegra has not been very good at the pass blocking. And it seemed to me like we were going to start seeing Ethan Anyanwa maybe eat into Tegra's snaps a little more. I was really surprised in the Washington game when not only did that not happen, but we didn't see Ethan get a single snap in the game. So up first, number 1, the guy that I would like to see on the offensive line get some more snaps is Ethan Anyanwa at right guard. You've got Ethan for this year and this year only. And if he can help you even this much and be an upgrade over Tegra this much, I'd certainly like to see him play. And not sure why he didn't play at Washington, but Tegra had a rough game also with the penalties consistently. I would definitely like to see that. So moving over to the defensive line, Caden McDonald has obviously been incredible. Maybe the best one tech in the country. We did a question over at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Somebody brought it up on the board where I'm over at BuckeyeHuddle.com every day on those boards. It's an awesome time for those of you who love to talk Buckeye stuff all day. And Tony's over there, Tom's over there, I'm over there, Andrew Ellis, Kevin Noon, we're all on the board. And one of the questions somebody brought up was, would you take K-Mac or Tyleek if you were starting a defense? Obviously, they play different positions. Tyleek a 3-tech, K-Mac a 1-tech. Who would you take? And when we look at these players, Tyleek is a twitch monster who was great at rushing the quarterback, also really good in the run game. K-Mac, not as good at rushing the quarterback, but a monster in the run game and absolutely cannot be blocked one-on-one. Tyleek was similar in that way. A double team, you can't move K-Mac off the spot. These two are roughly the same size. I think the difference here between the two of them is, number one, I think a elite one tech is harder to find. And number two, there was some that were worried about K-Mac's motor coming into the year. Was he going to be able to sustain an extended amount of snaps? We'd not seen it before. Not only has he done that, but Tyleek, his motor was questioned throughout his career. Some people even question his effort at times. I've never seen anybody question that with K-Mac since he started this season. It's only been this season. It's not been long. But the amount of effort he brings on every single play is similar to that of Caden Curry, which is about the biggest compliment you could give when it comes to effort. And I think ultimately, maybe I'm being a prisoner of the moment, Tyleek was a first rounder. I don't know if Caden McDonald will be, simply because of the measurables, similar to the reason that Georgia didn't want him. Georgia let him go. He doesn't reach those desired measurables. But somebody's going to get him and get a steal if he gets out of the first round. We'll put it that way. But he's got shorter arms, that type of deal that they look at, and a lot of them scratch him right off the board. That's what Georgia did. So somebody will get a steal. But if I'm building a team, K-Mac or Tyleek, I think I'm leaning K-Mac. Let me know what you got on that one. But after K-Mac, when we look over at 3 Tech, you had Edric start the year, and a lot of people were really excited about Edric, myself included. Has not gone well, and he lost his starting role to Ty Malone, a fifth-year senior who is playing better than he did last year. But ultimately, Ty Malone is just a guy. Behind Ty Malone and Edric, you got Jarquez Carter, who's a freshman, who I think is a freshman that has a bright future in store for him at Ohio State. I thought that at some point this year, we would start to see a little more of him. And based on how the situation has gone at 3 Tech, I would have thought, if you'd have told me Edric would be benched, that we would be seeing more Jarquez Carter. Maybe not just Jarquez Carter, but more Jarquez Carter. And we haven't. 31 snaps on the year so far. It's been Ty Malone. Jason Moore was injured, and he was not on the availability report, which means he was healthy last week at Washington, but he did not play, so a healthy scratch. Maybe he was still a little dinged up. Maybe we'll see him get a little more of an opportunity, though I don't have high expectations for him this year either. And it would seem to me that it is pretty clear that the second best interior lineman this year has been the number 3 rated overall defender per PFF on this team, but it just jumps off the page every time he's in there. It's Will Smith Jr. Will Smith Jr. has been the second best interior defensive lineman. And against Washington, he played 11 snaps. He played 11 snaps because he's backing up Caden McDonald. You're not pulling Caden McDonald out of the game for anybody. Will Smith Jr. is a guy that I wasn't believing the hype this summer because the hype was coming. It's a guy I really liked coming out of high school. I didn't doubt his skill coming out of high school, but it didn't seem like it was clicking at Ohio State. It felt like he was lacking confidence, which he's later admitted he was struggling with confidence. He was one of the last guys in his class to lose his black stripe. He was injured, but it just felt like it wasn't clicking, and it really felt like that to me when Larry Johnson talked about moving him from 3 Tech to 1 Tech. Now, he's an undersized 1 Tech. And when Larry moved him, he was only 280. So at that point, a really undersized 1 Tech. He's up to about 290, 295 now. So when you get moved from 3 Tech to 1 Tech and you're undersized, and Larry's talking about, we're just trying to see where he fits after being there for over a year, it just sounds like, all right, things aren't working out great. And Larry saying that was just, I believe, in the spring. And then in the summer, we're hearing Sonny Styles at Big Ten Media Days bring up Will Smith Jr., Ryan Day, bring up Will Smith Jr., and it could have been one of two things. Either Will Smith Jr. is really flashing and he's really that dude all of a sudden, or he is the backup guy behind Caden McDonald. They know they're going to need him, and they want to build up his confidence. And maybe he is improving a little bit, and they really want to push him on, spur him on, let him know he can do it. We've seen that before. It's a good ploy. It's a good confidence booster when you see people you respect saying that in public about you. So it could have been one of those two things. My thought was they're trying to boost his confidence. That is not the case. Josh Padilla came out when we were getting interviews from linemen, and he was talking about the difference between blocking K-Mac and then going to Will Smith Jr. and their different styles and how Will is so slippery. And when he started saying that, I was like, okay, this sounds like it's probably for real. Maybe I should start buying into this. And ever since we've seen him on the field this year, he's just been tremendous. He's tremendous. And he is clearly the second best interior defensive lineman. Now, we are seeing this year Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry play all across the line. They're both playing 3-tech. If they can handle playing 3-tech, surely Will can. So why can't we see Caden McDonald and Will Smith together on the field as a way to get Will more snaps? I just have a hard time believing Time Alone is better at 3-tech than Will. When we see, what we've seen so far out of the two of them, I just have a hard time believing it. And I would love to see Will Smith Jr. get some more opportunities, certainly more than 11 snaps in a game. The dude is, he's got it, man. He's got the goods. And it's one of the super happy surprises that we'll talk about when we do that episode. Speaking of that identity, do you remember Keenan talking after the national championship, Keenan Bailey talking after the national championship about how excited he was recruiting tight ends, being able to tell them, people say Ohio State don't use the tight ends. Look, I showed him the national championship game. We had 4 tight ends in on the goal line. And he was so thrilled by that, to be able to say that to recruits. And this year, buddy, he doesn't need to pull up one single highlight. They've been in 14 personnel a ton. They were in 14 personnel several times against Washington. Here we go, 14 personnel down by the goal line at Washington. Wasn't the only time we lined up this way. Here's 13 personnel across midfield. We're seeing it a lot. The safeties, the tight ends overall played 120 total snaps. There were 62 offensive snaps. The tight ends are playing a ton. And that is cool, right? I think a lot of people are wondering, is this the plan moving forward? Maybe it's a little excessive. You've got a clear mismatch over everybody in college football with your wide receivers. You've recruited great wide receivers. They've had the best coaching in the world. We've seen what they do at the next level, what they do in college. They're fantastic. You're not going to get a bigger mismatch with a tight end on a linebacker than an Ohio State wide receiver on anybody else. You can say, all right, well, we want it for the run game. I got to say, just philosophically, what you're doing here, and we just looking at this picture, what you're doing here is you're bringing all 11 defenders inside this small space by playing all these tight ends. You bring everybody in and condense it. And now, instead of spreading out a couple of wide receivers and bringing these defenders out, you're now counting on every single one of your linemen to make their block, and you're now counting on your 4 tight ends to make their block as well. Because now you need all those guys to make their block, and if one of them misses, like we saw happen in the same formation with CJ Donaldson, when he had to meet the one-on-one, the guy in the hole one-on-one for a 4th and 1, and he didn't get it, he met a guy one-on-one. Well, that guy should have been blocked by Nate Roberts, who was supposed to lead him up in the hole. But Nate couldn't do it because Jelani Thurman missed his block, and Nate diverted, thinking that guy was going to blow up the play, and that's what he should have done. Unfortunately, Jelani ended up winning that block before Nate even got there, but that was a split-second decision. So Nate diverts to go help another tight end who missed his block, and CJ Donaldson meets the safety in the hole, or the backer in the hole, and doesn't get the first down. So you're counting on all your linemen and now all these tight ends to make these blocks, and it just seems like, I don't know if this is working great. Now, they did set that up, right? They used that formation on that 4th and 1 earlier with Donaldson running up there, trying to get the first down. They used it on that goal line, same formation, and they slipped him out this time and threw him the ball for an easy touchdown. So that was a good deal there, kind of setting him up with that formation earlier and then coming back with something different out of it. And you like to see that. But you just wonder, man, is it a little excessive? I mean, we see just a whole lot of the tight end stuff because every time you do that, there's no wide receivers on the field there. In 13 personnel, you just got Jeremiah. In 12 personnel, you just got Jeremiah and Carnell. You got a lot of wide receivers that can really play the position at a very high level. And right now, your slot guy is Brandon Inniss. It's Brandon Inniss, and Brandon, I think, was unnecessarily criticized for the first couple of games. And in this game, aside of the punt return, Brandon played a great game. He had a couple of first downs. He had 3 receptions for 33 yards. He was physical, and he looked like he had the juice that we saw in summer practice and the juice that everybody was talking about. It looked different to me. And I don't know why that is. You shouldn't see that, right? It shouldn't look like, boy, Brandon doesn't look as juicy as he did, and now all of a sudden he does. That really shouldn't happen. I'm not sure why that is. And I love Brandon, and Brandon's a great blocker, but I know a lot of people want to see Mylan Graham, and Mylan did get in for 5 snaps in this Washington game. I want to see Bryson Rodgers in the slot. Mylan doesn't play the slot. If you play Mylan, you got to take Jeremiah or Carnell out of the game. Carnell. And if you play Bryson Rodgers, you got to take Brandon out. You're going to sacrifice a little blocking taking Brandon out. But Bryson, I think, runs tremendous routes. He has great hands. He's faster than Brandon. And I'm not saying I want him to play over Brandon. I just want to see him play a little more. And I think he's earned it. Obviously, this guy who's put in a ton of time, put in a ton of work. And I don't like what he tweeted the other day, which I wasn't even going to bring up. Maybe I won't. He tweeted something to the effect of, and it might have been totally unrelated to Ohio State football or anything to do with it, but it was something like, let me read it so I say it correctly here. So it was a repost on Instagram Reels. And it says, some people never understand what you bring to the table until they see you at another table. And he retweeted it, and it says, Ma Dukes hit home with this one. So it must have been tweeted by someone named Ma Dukes, and it hit home for him. So some people never understand what you bring to the table until they see you at another table. Hit home for him. Now, that could be a girlfriend. That could be a ton of things. But it was the day after this game at Washington, and he hasn't gotten much run this year, and I would certainly love to see him get some run. So he is number 3 on my list. Now, moving to the backfield, C.J. Donaldson was brought in as a transfer running back, a senior, 1 year of eligibility from West Virginia, the good old ears. And he was brought in for some veteran leadership, for some protection purposes, a big get you a yard when you need it back, joining a running back room that had 2 second-year guys and Peoples and Dixon and a trio of freshmen coming in. And you bring this guy in, he was about 240 at West Virginia. He comes in, gets down to 227 in the spring game, looks lighter on his feet. His film and numbers at West Virginia say nothing but jag. And when I saw that in the spring game, I was like, okay, because one thing we always see from guys when they come in as a transfer to Ohio State is a new level of energy and juice. They just all sound like so excited. Like, I've hit the big times now. Even the guys that came over from Bama, it was just like a new chapter in life for them. And maybe they sound like this whenever they transfer somewhere else. But I can only speak for the Ohio State guys. And when they come, they all sound just like it. They're so thrilled. And some of them elevate their game. We've seen it. And it seemed like, all right, we're going to see this with Donaldson. And him and James Peoples, the assumed starters. James Peoples, the guy everybody was excited for this year. The J.K. Dobbins comparisons were all over the place. I thought James, based on his freshman year, was a potentially good starting Ohio State running back. I thought the comparisons to Dobbins had more to do with the fact that he was a little shorter, jacked, and from Texas. more than anything else, because his skill set nowhere near J.K. Dobbins, who was quick as a hiccup, and people showed us in his freshman year he was certainly not that. Averaged 4 yards a carry, and I was just underwhelmed. And I pointed that out, and a lot of people got really mad at me and made up a bunch of excuses as to why he averaged 4 yards a carry his freshman year. But the truth is, this is just who he is. He's not a great running back. He doesn't have the skill to be a great running back, and that's okay. Doesn't mean he can't be a contributing running back. Not everybody's great. Donaldson, if we're talking about these two guys, when we look at Donaldson and Peoples, they are both in the 400 range of running backs in the country, number 400 in yards after contact. I don't think I've seen Peoples break a tackle all year. It's like, it doesn't matter if he's running off tackle, if he's catching it out of the backfield. The guy, first contact, he's going down. Donaldson hasn't been better. He's a physical running back that runs to contact, but doesn't seem to understand how to use that size to his advantage and gives up leverage to everyone by standing straight up like he's a converted wide receiver and tight end, which he is. Talked about it after the game that he needs to work on that. And it's like, at this point, to me, in year 3 as a running back in college football, if you don't got that down, not by now, I don't know that you're gonna. Peoples, with that low center of gravity, and clearly a guy who doesn't slough off in the weight room. I mean, the dude's jacked, he's muscular. It would seem like he'd be more elusive and harder to bring down, but he just can't seem to shake a tackle. So those two guys in the 400s in yards after carry. Bo Jackson, number 16 in the country right now. And honestly, this isn't a question anymore about Bo versus these two guys. It is plain as day to everybody with eyeballs at this point, and the data backs it up. And Ryan Day's decision at Washington backed it up, with Bo with 17 carries, CJ Donaldson with 9, Peoples with 2, that there's a clear pecking order here, and Bo sits at the top, and that won't change for the rest of the year. Now, the gap between Bo and CJ Donaldson and James Peoples running the ball is rather large, in my opinion. It's pretty big. It's not very close. And to me, every time, can you just imagine for a second if you didn't have Bo on this roster and all we were seeing was James Peoples and CJ Donaldson run the ball, and you didn't have Bo to compare them to? I think that there would be a lot of heat on this offensive line. I think that most people would be saying, this is the line screwing up, because I know James Peoples, that's J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins 2.0. And look at C.J. Donaldson. Look, he's lost the weight. He looks great. Big physical back. I think that the line would be catching a lot of flack from the majority of folks if they weren't able to see what this looks like with a good running back. And that's the difference between Bo and those guys. It's pretty big. Now, every time, you don't want to run Bo into the ground, obviously. 17 carries, you're not going to average 17 carries, because in games where Ohio State is a 3-touchdown favorite, there's no need to run Bo 17 times. Then you can split that stuff up again. But every time you divert a carry from Bo to Donaldson or Peoples, it feels like there's a pretty decent drop-off there. I don't think it has to be that way, and that brings me to number 4. Is there an answer on your roster? There is. Player number 4 I want to see more of, without a doubt, Isaiah West. Isaiah West is a freshman, and I think that's the only reason we're not seeing him right now, because playing 2 freshmen, we talk about the money situation all the time, and people bring up, okay, look, you don't want to pay a guy coming in who's done nothing for you more than a guy who's already on your team and been working in your program for 2 years. That's bad for locker room chemistry. It's really no different than having a guy like Donaldson, a 4th-year guy, a 2nd-year guy like Peoples, and now 2 freshmen come in, and all of a sudden they're playing over them. I mean, you could say, all right, never mind. It is different, because you could say they earned it. They earned it on the field. But I promise you that the guys who didn't earn it, who got jumped, they don't ever see it that way, right? It doesn't change for them. The feeling is the same. They're not going to agree. But I'll be honest. I think that when we look at the gap, look, Isaiah isn't Bo. He's not Bo. But what he is a smart, physical running back. I've always said his running style, I think he's going to be a Buckeye fan favorite because similar to CJ Donaldson, he's a physical back, not the same size. He's about 215, but he looks for contact if he needs to. He will run you over. He understands leverage, and he is tough to bring down. And I think that this is actually the answer. If you're not going to use Bo in short yardage situations, it's Isaiah, but you don't just need to use him in short yardage situations. He can do everything, an all-around back. And I don't think that it is a coincidence that Ryan Day brought him up yesterday, not specifically, but he was asked about the potential of rostering a fullback, and he brought up that we need guys who can do more than just be a fullback. We use our tight ends to be a fullback, but you can't have a tight end who can just block and can't run routes. You can't have a running back who can just run and can't catch. And CJ and James and Bo and Isaiah, they can all catch. Now, there are 6 backs on this roster. He only brought up 4, which tells me Isaiah's in the conversation. He's in the conversation. And when we talk about the gap between Bo to CJ and Peoples, Isaiah isn't Bo, but I think he is in between that gap there. I don't think there's nearly as much drop off from Bo to Isaiah. And the great news is that's the future. We're looking at those two moving forward. And I think Isaiah is going to prove that to everybody pretty soon here, because I do think he's going to start getting some opportunities. And I think that it's going to be relatively soon, because what we saw at Washington was a little bit of a back off from, not a back off, but all right, we're giving James as much opportunity as we can to flash, to pop, and it's not happening. And he gets down to just now 2 carries in a big game. He'll get some more opportunities, but ultimately I think Isaiah is going to get his opportunity, because behind the scenes, I'm certain he's doing everything right. This is another Emeka Egbuka mentally, a 28-year-old kid in his head. Totally mature. I'm positive he's got all the studies down. The dude's the real deal. And when it comes to lower body strength, there's no way anybody's beating him, man. Look at the thighs on this kid. It's absurd. This is a picture from him, by the way, at 16 years old. That's Isaiah West at 16. He's now 18. He's our dude. Cannot wait to see him in there. We saw him just in one game in brief action, and he looked really good in his brief action, but you can't really count anything against that Grambling game other than you're just looking at not the result, but how the guy moves, how he handles the moment, and he looked pretty good. Now, one last thing before we get out of here, and I can't believe this was so long. I thought this was going to be a 10-minute video. I am a talker, but Ryan Day said after the Washington game that it feels good to have this kind of defense and know that you don't need to score every possession, which got me all stressed out, guys. I was stressed out the other day thinking, man, that's something I've never heard Ryan Day say. Makes me think like there's been a big philosophical change, and I don't like it. I don't like the way it sounds. I don't like the way it feels. Now, Ryan Day was asked yesterday a similar question at the press conference, and he responded. The Ohio State game at Washington, Ryan Day said, when you have a defense that's playing like this, you don't have to worry that you need to score. After the Ohio State game at Washington, Ryan Day said, when you have a defense that's playing like this, you don't have to worry that you need to score every possession, which didn't really sound like Ryan Day. But I never thought that I would hear Ryan Day say, I'm okay with not scoring on every possession. That's just never how he's been wired. Today at his press conference, he was asked a similar question.
Not feel so pressurized for your offense to be on every single play and not feel like your quarterback has to have it every single play.
I hear what you're saying, but no, I mean, I feel stressed about being on every single play. I don't know. I know the defense is playing good, but that's not the way it is on a headset or how it is on Sundays after watching the film. We expect to execute at a high level, and when we don't, it doesn't go very well. So
okay, so that's the Ryan Day we're accustomed to, and that's why the original statement kind of threw me for a loop. But it's clear nothing has changed with him. Score every time you get the ball. There is no conservative bone in him when it comes to offense. And that's exciting because you don't need to be conservative on offense when you have a great defense. You can just have a great defense and still be a killer on offense. Love it. Stone Cold Killer, Evil Ryan Day, Cocaine Day, whatever you want to call him. That man will never change, man. It is score, score, score. Now, reduce possessions makes them really important. Certainly makes the special teams more important. It gives them outsized importance when you are playing less plays. And I mean, honestly, he kept talking about the Washington game and saying that we only had 6 possessions. Technically, they had 7, ran the clock out, but I was calling it 6 because you really only had 6 that you were going to, have the opportunity to go score. He was calling it 6 too. So 6 possessions is just crazy. And I don't know if you watched on Buckeye Huddle Primetime the other day. By the way, guys, let's like the show and subscribe for your old buddy Juck right now here. And then you can check me out over at Buckeye Huddle Primetime. But I was talking to Tony the other day, and he brought up that in 2018, Ohio State in the first half averaged 7 possessions. In the first half in 2018. At Washington, 6 possessions in the entire game. That is how much not just the clock changes have changed football and reduced the amount of plays, but how much Ryan Day and the way Ohio State has chosen to play has reduced it. I mean, you're averaging about 60 plays a game. And even if we're just looking back to, 2022, 2022, you were averaging 67 plays a game. 2023, 64. It's just a continuous drop. And I believe at one point it was like 72, 74, like 5 years ago. So if we're talking 13 plays a game, right? Let's say 13 plays a game times 12 regular season games, that's 156 plays divided by 62 is what you're averaging now. That's 2.5 games, 2.5 games less football plays that you're playing. And what takes a wear and tear on your body? It's the number of plays, not the number of games. I mean, additional games, it's wear and tear mentally. It's more that you have to go through, but it's the number of plays. And the number of plays have been reduced by 2.5 total games, while the season to win a national championship has only been increased by 1 game. 1 game. It's 1 game more. Michigan in 2023 played 15 games to win the national championship. Ohio State in 2024 in the new system, 16 games. Now, there is the off chance that you could play a 17th game if you are the unfortunate soul who loses a conference championship game, but that is the only one who is going to do that. So anyway, folks, I do appreciate you guys so much. Always a delight. Please join me at Buckeye Huddle Primetime every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. And have a fantastic day. Go Bucks. Juck 'em Bucks out.